Welcome back to Midco Sports Magazine. Well, most studies around the world say that 95% of the human population believes in some sort of higher power. And for one Madison, South Dakota baseball announcer, that power has become his true calling after dealing with some unthinkable circumstances in his life. David Brown is the story of Keith Bundy, a man who has seen more than most who meet him would expect.
The summers in Madison, South Dakota have a familiar soundtrack. And Keith Bundy is there to provide the only voice you need under the music of baseball.
A two-run home run for Matt Murphy. As far as I'm concerned, I'll announce till they carry me away. Next batter, number one, pitcher Mitch McNary.
He's been the public address announcer at Flynn Field for more than a decade. Most in the crowd hear Keith's voice without giving it a second thought.
Mitch McNary with the RBI double.
After all, he's really good at describing what's happening. He doesn't stumble, he doesn't mix up his words, and he never gets a play wrong. But there's just a single thing most people don't know, one that causes most to do a double take when they find out.
Two men left on base. It just blows them away when they see the white cane or the guide dog and they're going, wow, this guy's blind, how do you do that?
Yep, Keith Bundy, the man describing all the action on the field, doesn't actually see it.
I was born blind. There was an area, the area of the brain that tells you what you're seeing did not form. So when I was young, I didn't have any eye problems, according to the doctors, but I couldn't see anything. And that was because of what they call congenital malformation of the brain.
Keith's blindness wasn't the only obstacle he had as a child.
I grew up pretty much in extreme poverty in southern Indiana. My dad was an alcoholic. I was an only child because due to my blindness, the doctors advised my parents not to have any other kids.
But when he was 5 years old, Keith's great aunt and uncle took him to the ballpark, where he literally got a feel for the game that would change his life.
I had walked around a baseball field, so I knew where the bases were, what general direction, and so a good broadcaster can describe it in such a way that it's just easy to picture the ball being hit in a certain direction or the player running in a certain direction, and that's been very helpful for me over the years.
Keith uses this braille pad to input the starting lineups and other information he may need during the game. He also has a spotter to point out all the action on the field, so he can announce everything with the clarity of a man who sees it all, but relies on his other senses to give us his own perspective.
3 runs on 4 hits, 1 man left on base. I will hear things you won't hear. My hearing won't necessarily measure as being better, but I will hear things you won't hear. The sense of touch in reading braille. You rely on all of your senses a little more than a person with 20/20 vision or reasonably good vision would rely on it.
Keith's love of baseball runs so deep, it carried on to his wife Peggy and their 4 sons, in a pretty unique way.
Well, this is a really interesting story. I taught all of my boys to play baseball. In fact, they used to be able to tell when a Bundy boy was coming up because they would always tap the plate every time. I taught them to do that so I wouldn't bean them when I pitched to them.
His children, all with the vision their father never had, grew up playing the sports their father never could, including football, where son Joe played for the Sioux City Bandits in the Indoor Football League, and son Ben earned a scholarship at Southwest Minnesota State.
I just love sports. I love the competition, love the fellowship that you have in the sports realm.
That fellowship would provide a comfort for the Bundy family when the unimaginable and the unforeseeable occurred after Ben's second season at SMSU.
As a sophomore during the off-season in February 2010, he had a brain aneurysm burst. We did not know he had it, neither did he, and the surgery removed the aneurysm, but complications came about and he died 5 days later.
Ben dying really, I think, shook up our whole family, probably the whole community.
You know, that was probably the darkest time of our lives.
It's often said that through the darkness, there exists a light. Keith didn't need to see it after his son's death, he just had to believe it. For most, that's easier said than done, but faith isn't something Keith uses when it's convenient. He preaches it every single week as pastor at First Baptist Church.
I think God has gifted me with a positive attitude, and you need that if you're going to be ministering to people, the attitude of positivity that God is on the throne, and that He'll get you through any obstacles that you may face.
Every Sunday for the past 24 years, Keith has used his own voice to provide his word.
People know that I'm not just talking a good game, that I have struggled with some things, you know, and I'm not just saying, oh, God can get you through this, God can give you the grace to get through this. From an academic perspective, I'm saying it because I have experienced it, and that helped carry us through, that the same God who was God before Ben's aneurysm is still God today.
On the field or in the pulpit, Keith's overcome every obstacle in his life and used his voice to provide entertainment and hope.
So many people don't like to speak on the microphone, but Keith has a good voice and he doesn't mind the crowd or what's going on around him.
My wife Peggy and I have always said that can't is not a part of our vocabulary. Instead of saying I can't, let's ask the question, how can I do this?
Keith may not be able to physically see the difference he's making, but his philosophy is anything but blind faith.
The bottom line, in life in general, I don't want people to think of me as a blind person. I want people to think of me as a person who is blind. I want that personhood emphasized, that I'm the same as you are. I still have the same interests, the same desires as other people have in life.
All right, David Brown joins us now. And David, the funny thing about this story is that Keith actually got his start in PA announcing on accident.
Yeah, that's right, Jay. Back in 2001, one of his sons was playing in a Legion game. The regular PA guy didn't show up, so the umpire asked his son, does your dad want to do it? And his son said, oh boy, you're going to create a monster, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Funny how things work out sometimes.
Exactly.
All right, well, if the center is the heart of the offensive line, then Hanson High School has the perfect guy manning the middle. Tristan Bender is a walking, talking feat of strength, both physically and emotionally. We'll have his story after this.